We have many NHL signings to discuss today, including some key RFA forwards for the Toronto Maple Leafs finally being officially confirmed. We'll get into all the latest coming up next. Welcome back here to Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, we have a lot of NHL signings here to discuss today, including some key RFA forwards with the Leafs, so let's lead in here with that. Now, we had reported back at the NHL draft that the Leafs were very close to signing Andreas, Johnsson, and Kasperi Kapanen, and I did a video indicating that they basically had verbal agreements in place. I'm not sure exactly when everything was going to be announced, but now they are officially announced, and the details of those contracts were exactly as to what was being reported at the time. Now, forward Kasperi Kapanen has agreed to a 3-year contract extension at $3.2 million. We do have the breakdown, which I'll put up here on the screen, and it shows that it's very, very bonus heavy, which is very typical with a lot of teams like Toronto who have deep pockets can afford to pay that. Players are very fond of the bonus structure in the contract, so obviously he's going to be getting a lot of money here paid up front. But Kasperi Kapanen is locked in now for 3 more seasons. He will still be a restricted free agent at the end of that contract as well, and he will have arbitration rights at that point in time too. So the other one here is Andreas Johnsson locking up a 4-year contract at $3.4 million. Now, I haven't seen a breakdown as of yet. If I do happen to come across one before this video is posted, I'll try to put it in here on the screen so you can see the breakdown of either bonus and salary. I would imagine it's somewhat similar to Kapanen's deal, so I'm sure there's likely is at least some bonus breakdown in there, but I haven't been able to locate it as of the time of the recording of this video. But either way, both of those signings are now officially confirmed and officially here on the books here by the Leafs. Now, there was also a report out there by Cap Friendly, who we rely on heavily for a lot of contract details, indicating that the Leafs have signed goaltender Michael Hutchinson to a 1-year contract at $700,000 as well. I'm trying to lock down the source of that because I don't see any other media outlets reporting it, and I also noticed that the Maple Leafs haven't officially announced it here as well. Now, with the Kapanen and the Johnsson signings back to the draft, many of the top NHL reporters were reporting on those contract details and had the accurate information, but so far we haven't been able to locate that. But obviously Cap Friendly is a very reliable source. I'm just trying to see where the information is coming from, as the Leafs haven't officially announced it here. But if that is the case and they sign Hutchinson to a 1-year, one-way contract at $700K, what does that mean for Garrett Sparks? More than likely, it could be a real possibility that he could be traded, which is not something that's a huge surprise. He certainly struggled last year, and we discussed that previously, that it was a possibility here as well. But do they go with Hutchinson, or do they possibly even make another option and maybe look to the free agent market, or maybe via trade? I don't know what they do. I mean, Hutchinson wasn't too bad when he backed up Anderson last season, especially near the end when he was called up. But I'm not sure that he's really the longer-term solution as a backup goalie. He certainly has had his times in the NHL. He's looked decent, but he's certainly been inconsistent as well. His time in Florida didn't go real well. But I guess we'll see what happens. It's not really clear how the Leafs are going to handle the backup goalie situation. We could have another year where they go into camp, have these guys battle it out, and then maybe one of them goes on waivers and they risk losing them again, which I don't think they're going to want to do for a second year in a row here. That was not good last year when they lost Pickard and McElhinney both. But however, I do think that it does increase the odds of Garrett Sparks being traded if the signing here is accurate. The Chicago Blackhawks have re-signed a couple of their forwards as well, inking forwards Dylan Sikura and John Quenneville to 2-year contract extensions at $750K. Of course, Quenneville they just recently obtained from the New Jersey Devils via trade, and of course Sikura has been with them for the past few years after signing after coming out of college. So obviously they're going to stick around in the organization. Quenneville's hard to say if he's going to be a regular NHLer or not. He's certainly been up and down, had his moments where he's been able to get some action in, and Sikura is certainly working towards building up here to being an everyday player. We'll see if he can accomplish that this year. But either way, 2 very low-cost contracts here for Chicago, and if nothing else, they could be valuable members of their American Hockey League affiliate. Now, St. Louis Blues have also re-signed defenseman Carl Gunnarsson to a 2-year contract extension. Obviously, he had a little bit of an up-and-down season last year, but certainly played great when it mattered most later into the second half of the year and into the playoffs, of course, helping the Blues go on to win the Stanley Cup. The contract value for Gunnarsson is $1.75 million over the next 2 years. He also has a modified no trade where there's a 5-team list that he cannot be traded to. So overall, not too bad. My only concern with the Blues on the blue line is I wonder with all the contracts they have lined up here for next year and beyond, maybe if a guy like Joel Edmondson might possibly get squeezed out. Obviously, we've seen even into the playoffs where he wasn't in every game. Sometimes between him and Bortuzzo, they're kind of rotating. So we'll see here. I mean, Edmondson could very well be a trade chip for the St. Louis Blues this offseason. We'll see how they proceed with that. But either way, Gunnarsson is locked up here for a couple more years. And staying with the Blues as well, one other piece of information I found from Pierre LeBrun. He's reporting that even though Jordan Binnington basically took over as the starting position, that the Blues don't seem to want to trade Jake Allen. Now, I wouldn't completely rule it out, the possibility that they might this summer, but the information he has suggests that they are fine, obviously giving Binnington a big raise and hanging on to Allen as well and having that be their goalie tandem, even if it means both of them, being paid a combined $9 to $10 million. Allen's contract is over $4 million, has 2 years left on it. So many people, myself included, thought the possibility really did exist that he could be traded this summer. And I wouldn't rule it out, but as of right now, LeBrun seems to indicate that the Blues are content with keeping them both in the fold here. But of course, that could cause some other salary cap victims here. So I guess we'll see how the Blues manage their offseason here after winning the Stanley Cup. The Anaheim Ducks have signed Sam Carrick to a one-year, one-way contract at $700,000 as well. 25 NHL games and certainly trying to become an everyday NHL player. So we'll see here what happens. Obviously, he will require waivers if he goes down to the minors, if he doesn't make the roster out of training camp. He was originally a Maple Leafs draft pick back in 2010 and has been a pretty solid American Hockey League player. Last year, he was a point-per-game guy at 61 points in 61 games, so I do feel like he likely has earned an opportunity, and we'll see what he can do with his contract. And with the Ducks looking to go to a younger team and obviously shed out some of their veterans, might create an opportunity for him to get a roster spot. The Ottawa Senators have re-signed Jack Rodwell to a one-year deal as well, worth $700K at the NHL level, but more than likely he'll play mostly in the American Hockey League. The American Hockey League salary he'd be given is $100K, which is pretty decent for the AHL. However, he's a decent call-up option. I don't see him being a regular at the NHL level. He has had his opportunities in the past when called upon due to injuries and whatnot, and has looked okay, but at best a bottom six forward, but more than likely going to play in the AHL, be a call-up option. This very well might be his last year in Ottawa because they have so many good young forwards that are looking for spots here that they might want that spot open for a younger forward in their system next season. The Carolina Hurricanes have re-signed goalie Alex Nedeljkovic as well to a 2-year contract worth just over $700,000. Of course, he played really solidly for the Charlotte Checkers in the American Hockey League. And right now, with their goalie situation not really clear at the NHL level, not really looking overly promising for Mrazek or McElhinney to return. So he very well could be part of the goalie tandem next year. I don't think he's ready to be a starter, but I can see them maybe giving him an opportunity to be a backup. Obviously, Scott Darling, one of the other goalies in their system here, is expected to be bought out if they can't trade him sometime before the deadline here on the 30th. So I guess we'll see what happens, but he's certainly a real possibility to be a backup goalie at the NHL level. Worst case scenario, he goes back to the American Hockey League, but many feel he's earned the opportunity to at least be a backup. Stars have re-signed 31-year-old right shot defenseman Taylor Fedun to a 2-year, 2-way contract. So obviously he's had an opportunity to play a lot of the NHL last year due to all the injuries the Stars had on the blue line, get himself into 54 games. He has 100 NHL games overall to his entire career experience here, so obviously more than half of that came last year, so he spent a lot of time playing in the minors. So obviously this is a pretty low-risk signing for Dallas. Add some added depth here to their D-core and can certainly be called upon depending on injuries. Certainly not going to be in any kind of a top 4 role at all, but we might be able to be a bottom pair guy, or like I said, maybe a 7-8 guy who can play on occasion, maybe even be able to go down to the American Hockey League when needed as well. So that is all your latest news when it comes to NHL signings. I do expect quite a bit more here as we approach free agency on July 1st. Obviously, many guys have the opportunity to re-sign with their existing teams here ahead of time. There very well should be plenty more news coming here as we approach July the 1st. So stay tuned to Top Shelf Hockey. I'll keep you up to date with all the latest breaking news. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you next time.